Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Uncannery. I am Doug.
I am Ron.
And I have a robotic cadence.
And I'm Don.
Today, I have a question for you, gentlemen. I want to hear about the teenage years for just a moment. I want to hear about the teenage years. Did you have an anthem that you listened to that kind of, I don't know, defined your adolescence? Was it rebellious in nature? Was there a style of music that you liked that mom just didn't want any more of? Turn that racket off. Did you have anything like that? I want to start here.
No. I was so not rebellious or cool as a teenager.
Okay.
Like, I didn't really listen to popular music until probably high school. And then I think it was just my buddies, like my buddy's dad who drove us around and to school. He just listened to classic rock. So when I got into popular music, it was like stuff from the 70s. And no one was yelling at me to stop playing that because everyone liked it.
Turn that Rush record off, young man.
Yeah.
It's 40 years old.
Yeah. I did get really into Def Leppard. That was, I really loved Def Leppard in high school.
What era of Def Leppard are we talking about? Like the 80s?
Pyromania. Hysteria.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hysteria.
I think that's still one of the single best produced albums ever made.
I would agree. They still pay that guy an exorbitant amount. That might be a whole separate podcast. The guy who produced that, he is still looked after. People are still going after him saying, produce our records. And he makes unbelievable amounts of money to get that sound.
Earned every penny. Don, how are you rebelling?
I'm not a rebel. But trying to think about the anthem song, like I have very strong memories of two specific categories of music, but I don't know, an anthem might be too strong. Like the things that would just naturally pop into the CD player on my car when we went out driving would be B-52's Cosmic Thing CD.
Yeah.
Especially Deadbeat Club was our favorite. And this one is a strange memory because I have super strong memories of the CD and I can remember what it looks like, but I can't name a single song on it. But I could probably, if we played it, I could probably sing along. Is Kerosene Hat by Cracker.
Yeah. You're taking it back. Okay. But neither of these made any family members mad.
I never really played music around my family, so they never had the opportunity really to opine.
Okay.
I feel like this is like maybe a generational, like by that time we had Walkman and stuff and you would just go listen to your music on your headphones.
Okay.
I didn't know anyone who was like making their parents mad because they were playing music on the record player or anything.
Yeah. For me, things started to change because of the parental advisory explicit label that was on CDs. I remember really wanting Limp Bizkit's The Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water. Like I wanted it so badly because there was a promotion. It was like a wrestling promo that had one of the songs in it. And I would be praying that the commercial would come on so I could hear the clip of the rap rock all over again. And I think that's what started it. And I remember bargaining with my mom saying, I'm only going to listen to songs 1, 7, 9, and 12 on this. None of them are explicit. Those are the only ones. And then of course I'm listening to the whole thing, but
Did your mother not want you to listen to it because of the sticker or because she had listened to the songs and determined that the content was not appropriate for young Douglas's ears?
No, she had not heard the album. She simply saw the sticker, saw the album cover, which was just very kind of lurid art. And I think she made her decision right then and there. I don't know if I need my son listening to this. I think that's what started it for me. Maybe it is just me then. Yeah, that was it. And then Linkin Park. Yeah, that was a big part of it. Okay.
And did you choose music because your mother didn't want you to listen to it? Or did you choose music because you liked it and...
You like this, Mom? You don't? That's what I want now. No, nothing that evil. No, this was just, I think the second the teenage hormones started to kick in, like those prepubescent like moments where you go, things are changing. I just attached myself to more aggressive music immediately. Like that was the outlet, because I realized I could have the feelings without any of the violence, the anger. It was just, I could enjoy the music, and I felt like I could channel it through that. I think that's where things changed. Yeah, it was around that time. Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit. I remember those were the two that were the discussion of, I'm not sure.
And it's really hard to say why you like anything as a adolescent, I feel.
Yeah.
Because it's like, there's so many spheres of influence. Was it someone you knew? Was it someone you wanted to know? Was it something you thought would make you look cool? What were the music? There was always musical acts that you listened to in deep privacy and told no one about. For me, that was the Shins. I was like, no one can learn I like the Shins.
Wow. How sad. I love the Shins. I was very public about
I do
that.
too, but I think that doesn't even sound like an embarrassing group to me anymore.
No.
But I think somewhere at my school, I must have heard
Ron
someone
at home in his bedroom listening to 1940s musicals.
Now
Sing
we're
along with Annie,
talking.
Get Your Gun.
Now we're talking. Yeah.
It was all cats for me.
Oh. And that, I really hope that neither of you gentlemen bring to the podcast. Cats, I just can't do it.
I think now I will, actually. I'm very fascinated by cats, but that's a discussion for another time.
The musical Cats?
Yeah, I've only been introduced to it in the last couple of years, but the fact that it was as popular as it was, I think says a lot about a culture in decline.
Okay. You always find a way to sell me, Papa. And you did it again. Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, no, there's too much. All right. So why do I bring this up? Today, we are going to talk about this journey that I started on of the rebellious music led me into heavy metal music. And I think that even before I was buying records, I think that the genesis of this, I've always looked at it as in 5th grade, my uncle gave me an Iron Maiden album. And that took me a very different direction, just because the energy that was involved, the operatic singing, the guitar solos, I loved all of it immediately. And I think that's what kind of started to steer me on that path. And there's a weird thing that happens with metal that when you really get into it, it becomes like this almost depraved act of looking for what's heavier than that, what's heavier than that. And that eventually led me to the genre that is known as black metal.
Spooky.
Very much.
What do you mean by heavier than that?
That is a great question. So if you look at the genesis, many people are going to put Black Sabbath as the genesis of heavy metal. There were groups before that, but they really were the first prototype for that. Heavier involves we're becoming less melodic. The vocals are going from screams into territory that, like we're going from the singing to the screams. We're playing drums at a speed that sounds like a machine gun, to where it's described as a blast beat. That's like a very common term. We're borrowing from other extreme genres of music like hardcore punk rock. We're borrowing from, you name it. It's just becoming a more warped and isolated version. It's harsher to the ear, I would say. Not that there's not a lot of craftsmanship to it. I definitely have put on many a record and people say, there's no musicianship in this. And I go, you try to play this, because there is. But eventually I land on black metal.
So it has to do with the musical sound of it, not with the content of the lyrics, for example.
It also could have to do with that. There are so many subgenres. You have your industrial metal that has a lot to do with like kind of an industrial sound, meaning like factory, like kind of noises and drum machines that kind of create a droning machine-like sound. You have death metal, which is your also screamy and like big drum beats and things, but it's focused around the name of the band that is the originator of the genre is Death. And so they were trying to emulate that sound, but it's characterized with like very low guttural kind of screams.
See, that's really strange to me, because I always associate death with being quiet.
Yeah. If these metalheads, they don't go gentle into that good night, if you will.
But there's like this sort of, the idea of being heavy does involve darkness and spookiness, and I guess things that are antithetical to popular music at the time, which is usually about like love songs and upbeat songs and I'm driving to the coffee shop songs, and then It's like punk, right?
Yep.
Where punk shows up and is, we're going to play the music really bad. We're not going to be very commercial. And then it becomes very commercial. And I think they were trying to like, oh, punk failed. Let's do it. Let's go further by being like, yeah, by talking about death and blood and ghosts and J.R. Tolkien.
Yeah. Watch out for J.R. That's all I got to say. Yeah, a lot of that. But it also has to do with, I think of genres like doom metal, or sometimes it's like the whole podcast is actually just going to be genres. Never mind. We're not just talking about black metal. This is going to be 1 hour of every subgenre in existence. But I think of doom metal or like stoner metal, like the idea of the slowest possible, heaviest riffs that are grooving, bluesy, but just are like played at the slowest speed humanly possible. But that would be considered heavy just as much as Metallica's first 4 albums would be considered heavy. It actually is a great question. It needs a book to be written.
Yeah.
What is heavy? Just to study from that perspective. So black metal is a weird one because they very much were at the outskirts and fringes of what extreme metal was. And they were trying to take it to, in their minds, probably the most extreme places, even rejecting what was probably selling. I don't know, like maybe if you sold 10,000 albums, which maybe that seems like a lot, but internationally selling 10,000 albums is probably not that much. They were trying to say that was commercial. These black metal groups, if we do a pressing of 500 and sell out, that's it. That's how rare we are.
Black metal trying not to make money doing what they're doing.
Oh yeah, the money was never important. It was all about the reputation. And of course we'll get into it.
It's like a scene, right?
Yeah.
Is it the same as artificially generated like scarcity, right? Oh,
Yeah.
because it's scarce, it must be cool.
I think that there is some of that. I very much still like the music a lot. I actually make this kind of music now, but there's something to it, especially this very specific era that we're going to look at in the early 90s that kind of set the tone for what this is. And it's changed a lot now, but yeah, there was a certain exclusivity to it that, I don't know, I was drawn to as I was like looking at the history of metal, because I was always so fascinated by that, like going, okay, here's Iron Maiden, and that leads to this band. Down the rabbit hole we go. And
It's the NFTs of
that's right. Once you get that print, that's it. The ones that we're going to look at today, we're going to the 1993 black metal murders. Actually, this involves bands that I discovered their music, and then I discovered they killed each other. So it's quite the tale. And I'd like to start it with a quote from one of the frontmen of the bands that we're going to be talking about. And not only the frontman, but he actually played every single instrument on every single one of his records. His name is Varg Vikernes, has a one-man black metal project called Arson. He said, "Youth are not being told what to do, or they are being told what to do, but instinctively they know it's wrong. Christianity is good, America is good, but we knew deep down, we knew this wasn't it." This is something that he was reflecting on as he was producing his first few albums as being a Norwegian musician, and he felt very ostracized from his community. He saw the world changing around him, and he felt that he was losing his cultural identity, and losing his mind, in my opinion. And we're going to break down some of what that is. So shall we start at the beginning?
Please do.
Okay. In the late 80s, as we're talking about with heavy metal getting heavier, we're seeing that bands are pushing boundaries in terms of vocal attempts, as I was saying, how noisy things can get, how fast you can play, how slow you can play, and people are beginning to experiment. That genre I told you about a moment ago, death metal, emerges from this band named Death, that has very low growly vocals, that's incorporating elements of a lot of the 80s music or the 80s metal music that's there. But there's a new extremity that is being hit that starts to attract groups of musicians that want to play this style of music. That music is American in its base. That's where this starts. But these records make their way to Norway. A group of teenagers in Norway who started to play this music realized that they wanted to create their own identity and their own sound, and they pushed themselves towards the more evil tendencies of some of the groups in the more extreme genres. And they said, what can we do to really push this in the direction that they wanted to? A band emerges from this experiment called Mayhem. The year is 1987, and they release their Death Crush EP, or as I have heard it most interviewed and talked about, the Death Crush EP, which is very famous for it. The album cover, shouldn't be laughing. It's so extreme. It is the severed hands of a prisoner that are hung up on a wire with a red background and the band logo. So they're really making a statement in terms of how extreme the imagery is on the front. They have not played a live show. They essentially have just released the record and have circulated this around the teens in Norway who are interested in this scene. Just on its reputation alone, people are being drawn to Norway because this is such a unique sound. The guitarist Euronymous kind of created something that was completely unique to them at the time. And actually, Varg Vikernes was part of the project as well at this time. It was this group, and this eventually shoots into a bunch of other bands. This inspires these musicians to start creating albums, and Norway essentially becomes the hub of black metal. This is the place you will see on the backs of some of the albums. It will say true Norwegian black metal. And if your bell is ringing a little bit for, sounds a little nationalistic. Did they ever get into territory where they maybe made some insensitive racial comments? Absolutely. And we're getting there.
Not the Norwegians. They're so nice. Telling me the Norwegian kids are punks?
Yeah.
Gutter punks?
No. Yeah. And that's the thing is it does feel a bit like punk rock. It's the idea of, we're not just going to be like this other group. This is our thing. We'll do it our way, which is the thing that I admired about it in terms of its sound. But it, like most things that start to claim a certain identity or believe that they are one way, it eventually becomes very close-minded too, because these groups decide this is the way that it should sound, which was the opposite of what they wanted to do originally. Dark Throne, another group in 1992. So we're fast forwarding a little bit, releases A Blaze in the Northern Sky around the same time that Burzum, that I talked about earlier, releases their self-titled album a month later. These albums are landmark in establishing, okay, this is the scene. These are the groups that are putting forth this music, and this is what the sound is. And we even have groups that are changing their sound intentionally to sound more like this Mayhem Death Crush record that had come out. This is changing the way that people play music. Don, you seem to have an inquisitive look on your face. Do you have questions?
Yeah, I do. So you keep talking about their belief in the sound of a music, or that it should sound a certain way. But at the same time, we started with their belief that they weren't going to commercialize. So are they like mild-mannered businessmen during the day, and then they turn into these black metal? Sounds like a cult is what it sounds like. There's a belief that it has to sound this way.
You can call them ghouls.
Yeah. I would argue that there is very cult-like behavior in this, because the kids, almost all of them, are between the ages of 16 and 20 that are in these projects. And that is the great irony of this, is they listen to already this very fringe music and say, we're going to create our own thing and make our own sound. And then the second they define that sound, they're making a decision. This is the sound, which I think was the purpose the whole time, was to not do that. Like, they were supposed to just individually express themselves, and then they almost sell themselves short by saying this is the way that it should sound. No, these are very misguided youth. So to go back to our quote from the beginning, when they were teenagers, the way Varg describes it is the parents generally were not parenting them much. It's like a group of middle class Norwegians that essentially have parents that say, just do good in school, do your thing, and aren't really invested in the kids' lives as much. So they turn to music. And once you have this figure in Mayhem, Euronymous, as he's named, that has this very cult-like personality, is very strong, influential, mental kind of presence. He, to use your analogy of it being a cult, it seems like he's this cult leader. He brings them into this sound and this way of creating records.
And just to clarify for our listeners at home that might not be taking notes as you speak, you're just making up all these names as you go, right? Like it.
You'd think.
Sounds like you're just naming Fraggles or something.
For the people who aren't here in the studio with us, Doug currently has the Book of Revelations out in front of him, and he's just picking random adjectives and proper nouns from there.
This is really a cult-like study, so I can start my cult. And I want to welcome the two of you to our first meeting.
The Uncanna cult.
Great.
Unculdery.
And a quick shout out to the board game Let's Summon Demons. Just unbelievable replay value that we've had. We're looking for sponsors. I'm just saying we'd love to host.
We've had some good fun. I think I won both times, didn't I?
Yes,
sure. I'm good at it. Give us money.
How do you spell pander? I'm not
spelled with a S with 2 lines through it. That's it. So this is all we've discussed so far is Mayhem has created an EP. This leads other people to want to create this sound. That's the focal point, is this genre of music is created. And that's what I was captivated by at the time, was like, okay, this does sound different. And I love the kind of neoclassical melodies that were involved. I like the fact that we currently, and I would say that we don't have we're not in a LA grade studio right now. We could at least say that. Even the stuff that we're sitting here recording this podcast with right now would be considered the top of the line, highest quality recording equipment that you could possibly use to record something like a black metal record. There are tales of Varg using a computer PC mic, like what you would use to talk to friends online during a video game or during a Discord call, is essentially what he was using to record all of the vocals for his album. The guitars were often directly into the mixing board or 8-track player, and the distortion was created by just clipping the audio as high as it could possibly go without any natural amplification. I just was interested in the idea of the DIY ethic of it, and I liked a lot of the records.
That happens a lot, though, right? With like new music scene formation. Like I feel like the music scene is a sort of Ouroboros, where a scene pops up. It's all very DIY. It's young people figuring something out. It finds a market, becomes big. Then you bring in the microphones and the cool stuff, and then it becomes the kind of blasé or passé, and then a new group of gutter punks rises up from the ashes, and they got their weird Apple laptops and they're garage banding some weird stuff, and now they're hot.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And once you lose that mama, gotta cry to papa. Nobody's ever said that, by the way.
Who's papa?
You didn't have to make it sad, man. As I'm learning the backgrounds of all these bands, I'm not taking it incredibly serious. I'm just like, okay, so here they are. A lot of the lyrics verge on either pagan or satanic. And that's common for metal, that you're going to use something that's outlandish to go towards. They were a bit more serious than I originally had taken in. So I'd like to go to April of 1991. Mayhem has played a few live shows at this point. I want to talk about their vocalist. I know that I said Euronymous was the name of the guitarist. It's a little bit easier to remember the singer's name. Ironically, or literally, depending on how you look at it, his name is Dead. That's his name is Dead. Dead, the singer of Mayhem, was notorious for the style of paint that he wore on his face. He was famous for his stage performances in which he would lacerate himself live. It's very extreme performances that he would give. And what is tragic about all of this is that behavior was, I believe, it seems to be somewhat of a cry for help, because in April of 1991, he took his own life. There is speculation that Euronymous was encouraging him to do this. There is speculation that Dead had asked potentially for help and was not getting it to continue to keep the grim atmosphere of the band alive. But the young man did take his life, and that was supposed to be the end of Mayhem. What Euronymous decided to do is Dead had taken his own life by basically he had shot himself with a shotgun. Euronymous opened up the cabin door to where he was living because he hadn't heard from him in a few days and found Dead there. And instead of calling the police, he decided to take high definition photographs of the body and collect pieces of the skull, to which he would in the future make necklaces from these fragments and would give to people that he deemed worthy to be in the scene. It's at this point that we veer into the territory of there's something very wrong here, to say the least. Varg Vikernes, who was in the band and had left the band, is now part of this band, Arson, was frustrated with the fact that essentially the scene had grown into something of Euronymous being a person who wanted the glamour of the violence and murder that had surrounded this. He wanted it to be more of a political message. And in the subsequent years, actually created a group called, I believe, the Inner Circle, that would burn churches in Norway. And we're talking 600-year-old, between 400 and 600-year-old churches that were in Norway because they represented the stain of Christianity on pagan land. And Varg was especially disturbed at the fact that Euronymous was a person who was proclaiming that he was the head of the scene. He was the person who knew Dead best. He had made these necklaces and determined who was in, but he wasn't willing to take up the cause and prove himself and the message of these bands, which, by the way, there's nothing that's directly saying on any of these records, go burn churches. There's no,
I heard if you really
slow down and play it backwards.
Yeah.
That only works for the Zeppelin record. You should know this. You were the guy who had the 70s rebellious stage. Your mother should have been there. I don't know what had happened.
Oh no, it's back. The Zeppelin ghost.
Yeah. So Varg was upset with Euronymous, and because in his mind, he was all talk. And the research, to let our viewers know, a lot of the research from this I have taken not only from just interviews that have been done, but a great majority of this has been documented in the film Until the Light Takes Us, which has direct interviews from Varg while he is in prison. Not to spoil what's going to happen here.
Is Varg going to go to prison?
Varg is going to go to prison.
Wait and see. Maybe he'll get out.
He does. Norway, shockingly light on their sentences for murder.
If I was ever going to go to prison, I would want to go to prison in Norway.
Yeah.
They look pretty nice.
His setup, especially in the film, it's like he has a computer, he has all of his instruments in his cell. It's unbelievable.
Can I ask? So we're still talking. You mentioned the meaning of the music, or the meaning of the. And I'm at some images of the people you've been talking about. And,
sure.
And I've got Dead here during a performance. What are they trying to convey? Is it that Norway is all about violence and death? Is that the pure message that we're supposed to be taking away?
This isn't to discredit adolescence, but much in the
adolescents beware. He's about to take a shot.
Watch out, kids. I'm coming for you. Much in the way that you will see kids get very passionate about something, because passion is passion and it's time to be excited about those things. I think that maybe is the most disconnected aspect of this. There seems to be some kind of misanthropic message that is communicated through their music, and you hear it in the isolation, in the way that they describe Norwegian weather and the forests and the beauty of the moon. But then you hear it in their anti-Christian messages. You hear it, but there's not, again, I think that this is the problem, is Varg, as I just said, is thinking the way you express yourself in black metal is you go and you burn down churches. And to Euronymous, it's you have a great reputation for making evil sounding music and you're an evil guy. That's the whole thing is like my singer committed suicide and I made a necklace from the pieces of his brains and I'm deeming who's important here. And then, I only mentioned their name once earlier, but Darkthrone, who released that album, A Blaze in the Northern Sky, their idea was we won't play live at all. We'll just make records because we just love the way that this music sounds and we love the music exclusively. And your music is really what holds the value. They are also some of the only ones that are still making this type of music today. And they've gone so many different directions. But to be honest, Don, I don't think there's an answer to that question. I think that it's very much in the imagery, the sound of the music, and the way that they acted. It seems to just be, and this is getting more to what I was going to ask you at the end of this, is like the product of teen angst. It seems to be a product of teen angst of, I don't feel like I have a place in my world. And is this a matter of, you're right, Norway's culture's fallen apart and we need to go reclaim it because a McDonald's opened up, which is something like Varg talks about, going by a McDonald's and shooting at the windows with a rifle after it's closed just to make a statement? Or is this, I am 16, 17 years old and I don't know who I am? I don't know if I have an answer for this.
But none of these musicians are 16 or 17 years old, right?
When they first start making the music, yes, they are.
But then they grow up.
Yes, right? Eventually they do. Yes.
And I guess that's so what you're describing to me sounds, and if I'm not hearing it, let me know. It just sounds like, can we make a sound in an image that will make people uncomfortable?
Yes.
Like that seems to be the goal, not because there's a message that we want to convey. I just want to do something that is unconventional and will make people uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so looking at the themes, right? Where does it head? I think that's a part of it. But then what's weird is to flip that on its head from what you just said, then there's also, we want to do something unconventional that makes people uncomfortable because we're looking for the people who are really cool with that. Yeah. That's the other part of it, is who are the people that we can separate from the unwashed masses that understand what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. But I almost think it's the self-defense mechanism of the genre, which is like, but nobody knows what we're trying to do. So let's just see if you're on the inside or not.
Is it also like the way that teenagers will desire some form of power over in a period of their life where they're very powerless, and so they'll go and create a cool skateboard club down at the rink, and then one of them will be chief of the skate rink. Like if you see them like, oh, we're gonna create our own scene and circle, and part of achieving that power is by refuting the actual holders of the power, the people, the establishment. Mm-hmm. And we keep talking about the punk scene, but I feel like that's another kind of important parallel, because the English punk scene appears in the 70s during a moment where like it actually is like a very tumultuous time for England and politics and their role in the world. And so they also have a very anti-establishment kind of ethos, but it's channeled more politically than let's just pretend we're dead and stuff. Like, and I don't know a whole lot about the national history of Norway, but I don't believe the same sort of environment exists at the same time in the late 80s, early 90s for Norway. Like you said, they're middle class, comfortable, cozy kids. They don't really have like a real sort of something to channel that energy in what we might consider a productive or interesting way. So they have to invent this. Yeah, let's just.
That's a good impression of the voice. I like that. I don't know. And that's the thing that fascinates me, is the only part of our tale that is left out is, and then I want to circle back to what we're talking about right now, is eventually tensions build between Varg, who's part of Burzum, and Euronymous from Mayhem, where Euronymous begins to basically speak out against Varg and say that he might burn the churches, but he's not part of the again, it's like this bickering and quarreling back and forth of who is the most extreme and actually does this. And this leads Varg to going to his house when somebody basically tells Varg, oh yeah, Euronymous wants to kill you. And Varg says, okay. And again, the one-upsmanship continues. Then I'll kill him first. Shows up at his house, stabs him I want to over 20 times and kills him and gets a sentence in prison, gets the maximum sentence in prison in Norway for this. And you can look at the images of Varg as he's being admitted into prison. The most famous image is him like smiling at one of the cameras after he gets his conviction. And it's just this kind of snapshot of the quote unquote misguided youth of like, how did it get to a point that you guys are killing each other? Like a person has taken their own life and we're not even taking a moment to recognize that like somebody's friend is gone, let alone continuing the reputation of your band. Why did it hit a point that you think that you're not serious about this thing that's like selling 500 copies of an album and somebody is ending somebody's life over this? And I just remember the feeling I like, even being at the time when I was getting into it, I was 17 and thinking like, oh, I don't know if I want to listen to this because this is like, really, actually, it's not just part of the image. They're actually killing each other. And the separation that I had to do in order to distinguish the music from the people, it's difficult to do. I don't even know if you can fully, even though they've made some of the records that I enjoy the most. But there is something to be said for, what do you say about art and creation? Like these, I would say, are healthy outlets, right? Is if it had stopped in the music, we had put it into the lyrics and what we created, and we're creating this thing that people can also enjoy, or maybe endure is a better word, right? That would have been a healthy way to channel it. But now we're seeing that this is quite the opposite, that it's a group of people that are creating this, and like the life is just as important as the art, and then it becomes too serious. And again, we have people who have died because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Ron's looking.
I had two thoughts and I forgot both of them.
It's probably because I overextended myself on that last portion there.
So you said you like some of this music the best. You said you enjoy listening
very
to this
much
music
so.
the best, even though it was produced by evil people who committed murder and burned down historic monuments.
Yes.
But I would say that's most art in history.
See, I would push back on that, but go ahead.
I feel like there is always an ugly element to the production of art and the marketing of art and who owns art. Like there are terrible people replete through the history of Hollywood and filmmaking and music industry, people who take advantage of artists and cut them out of deals and all sorts of like behind the scenes wheeling and dealing.
The Medicis were thugs.
Yeah, some Medici shit. But yes, in this instance, I'm not trying to absolve these kids of these crimes, but I'm saying like, there's to me, there's a quaint, charming nature. Oh, at least they did it out in the open. At least they were literally backstabbing each other or something. Right? I don't mean that literally, but there's always a messiness, I think, to art. And I don't really want to slap them on the wrist for being like, you didn't do it the right way. Like, I think they are victims of very understandable and I think teenage emotions and experiences that everyone has, just amped up to a very dangerous degree, right? That sort of desire to create something for yourself, to be separate from what you consider a bad authority, not necessarily authoritarian, but something like that, right? And also that drive to be genuine, to be real. I'm going to be real evil. I'm going to be the most evil. I'm going to be the most real of you all because you're all fakers and posers, right? Like how often is that also an element of artistic scenes? Who's real? Who's not? Who's doing it right? What are the standards we're setting ourselves for this genre or whatever it is we're making?
I can only think of this one.
Really?
This one, unless the serial killers have a secret club that I don't know about.
To the degree that they murder each other. But this happens in rap culture, East-West rivalry in America, right? And
that was the one I was going to say.
Same thing.
The closest one I can imagine is the rappers killing each other in the 90s especially. That's like what I think of immediately.
What follows, I think, a very similar trajectory of we have to make this music that's very anti-establishment and will not be marketable to a group of people we don't like, namely white people or people in power. And then we're just going to make it as thug as possible and it's true to our experience. But then it's not really true to most of those artists' experience because they don't actually live like that. And so then they get called, oh, you're not really thug enough and blah, blah, blah.
And then they kill each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to go back to your Hollywood example, right, behind the scenes is one thing, and absolutely I agree. There's sketchiness that happens in all industries behind the scenes, and as long as I don't see it, I don't have to react to it.
Yeah.
But then when an actor does a fantastic performance and they have an au revoir of performances and Oscars, and then we find out that they drink infant blood or they are pedophiles,
which they all do, by the way.
But we shut.
Thank you. Somebody has.
We shut down access to their films. Like I can think of artists right now that I would like to enjoy their work, but I don't because of what I have found out about the way that they've abused others or they've done bad things. So it does affect, like, objectively, it doesn't change the performance that they did. Sure, it's a great performance, but I don't allow myself to enjoy that because of the external. So the same thing here. I'm wondering, and the thug rap correlation makes a little bit more sense to me than, but I'm thinking about your mom. Oh my gosh, of course. Why would she let you listen to music produced by murderers that don't have a wholesome message for the young formative mind to, or the young forming mind to adhere to?
And I think it's funny that you were going that direction. Somebody I was thinking of immediately was Andy Warhol, as weird as that is. I was thinking of Andy because there are so many memoirs. Like, I think it was like an Edie Sedgwick's memoir or something like that, of her saying like how many times she had considered taking her own life, like over just her treatment of Andy in the way that he treated people, essentially. But Andy Warhol is maybe even beyond just his art. How many galleries can you go in and it's, there's Brillo boxes and soup cans, it's got to be another Andy piece. But even beyond that, just like the ways that like we have fonts or bold colors, or like we do monochrome celebrities, like things that like we don't even associate with like instantly saying Andy, but that's a part of our art. I think that he is also representative of somebody that's like such a vapid figure, yet all of us consume and think of art in a different way now because of him. Obviously, black metal is like the most niche and small of the genres, but I think that's the difficulty. Is I think for me, I find it impossible. Yeah, like I think I would ask you what you mean by not allowing yourself to enjoy the performance. Is it like a non-consume, like this person has done this, he's in this film, so I will no longer watch that film. But I would almost say that's different. That's consumption versus enjoyment, because I think enjoyment is something that's like it's like a snap decision that you make if I enjoy this or I don't.
But it interferes with, right? So
it interferes with
because
the process.
When I'm watching it, I can't think but the terrible things that person did to whatever victim they had, right? So it's not. It's what I did enjoy, I can't enjoy because
in the same way, yeah,
right. So I listening to the music, sure, if we're all pretending that we're dead and we're all pretending that we're Satanists and we're all pretending that whatever, versus, oh, no, we're really going to go kill people. That's a different element that would interfere with my enjoyment. If we go to the concert and we're not sure who's coming home, that wouldn't be fun for me.
100%. Yeah.
Important to say, this sort of violence doesn't really spiral out of this group, right? I think it is worth saying the instances, the story of Varg and Euronymous is contained between them, right? The rest of the scene and there are other groups and artists who make this kind of music, and like you said earlier, they eschew this kind of thing. Like, they are not going around burning churches and trying to kill their friends. This is a kind of extreme example.
Yeah, arguably the most extreme, which is why, of course, we bring it to the uncanny. But what I take out of it is knowing, and I think that this is something that is like shared amongst people that have talked about this, is knowing that the sound of the records and then what's represented there, especially for those that like make not this style of music in terms of we're trying to accomplish the same goals, but maybe we like borrow some of the things aesthetically from the sounds of the music, which I definitely do, is that the records in of themselves kind of speak towards a sound that is unique, that now has a message that can be far more positive. And so I don't know. I think it's a good thing to be confronted about, because the honest answer is I do love the record still. So yeah, like how do you begin to separate that? And I think that it's a certain amount of almost surgical precision that you have to be listening to the guitar tracks, vocals, drums, and bass as its own isolated vacuum. I think that is what it is. Because I don't interact with this music in a way where I am taking it in, for lack of a better term, like taking it in spiritually. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
As esoteric as this sounds.
There's like a lot of ways that people listen to music, and like when you're a teenager, you identify by music, right? Like you are like listening to the lyrics and you're trying to form meanings out of them and trying to find connections. And I feel as I'm older, I just really want to, it's a different kind of enjoyment where I don't really need to know much or even anything about the person who made it. Does it just sound cool? Does it make me feel a neat emotion or enjoyment? Or maybe it's just nostalgia sometimes now. Yeah. Like, does it remind me about a time? And so, I don't know. For this kind of music, I do divorce these people and their actions from the art, and it doesn't really impact my enjoyment of the art. And it is interesting to try and figure out why. But I guess sometimes I just feel like people, I guess to me, it's not like the art created the tragedy, right? It's like the people made the tragedy, and decisions they made and factors relating to their environment and how they were raised or what they were doing, those led to both the art and the tragedy. But I don't see like the tragedy arising from the art. Therefore, the art is safe to enjoy. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
It does. But it also, it does.
Because the art's the cool thing from the tragedy. It would be more tragic to lose the art as well as the people who are actually harmed in these.
It's interesting to think of it from third perspective, because now it'll be the third time I've brought up Dark Throne. That group, specifically the drummer Gilf, was asked about all of them, and he brought up several things about Euronymous and Varg. And one of the things that he said about Varg is we don't talk at all anymore, because he was more interested in the politics and social situations that came up because of this music, and I was purely interested in the music. And when that became an issue, we went our separate ways. And when he talks about Euronymous, he said, I will always be grateful that I was able to take that guitar tone from him. But at a certain point, all of us realized that there was only madness there. It's something that they've brought up. And so knowing that's somebody who knew both of them personally, I think that it's interesting to hear his perspective in taking on, like, he continued the art on the side of, I would rather make the music exclusively instead of continue to attach myself to what the ideology behind this is. The music is the most important thing there.
So do you listen to this music because you're still rebelling?
It's a great question. I think that for me, I admire, and maybe this goes for all art, because I can see myself with almost any medium being into this, whether it's like film, canvas, sculpture, and I don't know, like it could be anything. When something is striving to go outside of the box, I'm always going to want to be, like I always generally am drawn to it in some way. But I think I generally listen to it now for similar reasons, that I'm interested in what people are doing with these colors on the canvas. I happen to be drawn to these colors on the canvas, and I want to see what these paintings look like. So when I think of some of the more modern artists that are blending other genres in, like I know, Ron, we've talked about Deaf Haven before, and I think about Wolves in the Throne Room, which is like a group from Oregon that kind of focuses on their like local surroundings, and that's the focal point of their music. I see a lot of beauty in it. I think that's what it is. I see a lot of beauty in it in a very unique perspective. But with that, I wonder if those bands that I love so much now would exist if not for the attention that those cases got. It's hard to say.
There you go, Ron. Forewarned is forearmed.
So be careful.
I've been to that church, the one that he burned down.
So unfortunate.
Not before it was burnt down, but I was there after it was rebuilt. Beautiful.
Do they have any information on the burnings? Do they?
So it was. So I didn't know about this. Actually, your story here is the first time that I have put that all together. But it's surrounded, like it's in the middle. It's outside Bergen, Norway, and it's a short drive out. Like I think we took a tram and then walked like 10 minutes, something like that. And it's surrounded by a really significant security fence. And it's just like literally in the middle of the forest. You have to walk through this quiet neighborhood of quaint little Norwegian houses. And then there's this giant church, and it's got these like significant security walls. And it's like why would you and you go inside the church and there's nothing materialistically valuable. There's not like gold, and it's carvings and it's beautiful. Yeah. But it's just bare wood. And so we asked somebody why, and they did say because somebody decided to burn it down, or somebody thought that it was a good idea to burn old churches down or something like that. And that was as much as we got. And it clearly was, I'm irritated by that. Don't ask me another question type of, because it was the person working there that we asked, but it wasn't like, here, let me tell you the whole story. It was like some jerk did this and we had to rebuild it.
Yeah. Takes a drag of their cigarette, hands you a Burzum cassette. Yeah. Says it's all here, buddy.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I need to go collect my thoughts and think about this for a moment. But for the next episode,
I think you should listen to more wholesome music.
I was just going to say, I might have burned my copies of all of these records. Who knows? In protest.
Burned them onto your computer, onto your CD.
LimeWire, baby.
Why you got to shout out the good old days. That's right.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it's a genre of music that I am aware exists, but I don't listen to, I don't enjoy. I don't know very much about it.
Yeah. Next time, tell us about where butt rock came from, please.
Oh, yeah. We'll give you all of that. We'll maybe do some impressions, too. I pride myself on my butt rock vocals.
Good. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.